What if everything we have explored in this chapter comes down to one simple realization? The quality of your life is deeply influenced by the state you live from most often. Not occasionally, not once in a while, but daily. Moment by moment, choice by choice, because life is not created only by what happens to us. Life is shaped by how we meet what happens to us. Now think about the journey we have taken. We begin by exploring the intelligence of the heart. Then we discovered that the heart is constantly communicating with the brain. We explored intuition, coherence, gratitude, elevated emotions, stress, survival conditioning, identity, future self, rehearsal, and through all of it, one theme kept appearing again and again: state matters. Because every thought is influenced by state. Every decision is influenced by state. Every relationship is influenced by state. Every possibility is influenced by state. Now, most people spend their lives trying to change circumstances, and there is nothing wrong with that. But often they overlook the state from which they are creating those circumstances. Now imagine two people facing the same challenge, the same problem, the same uncertainty. One approaches it from fear, the other approaches it from coherence. The challenge is identical, but the experience is completely different because the state is different. Now this is where heart-centered living begins. Heart-centered living is not about ignoring logic. It is not about becoming emotional. It is not about avoiding reality. It is about creating harmony between thought and feeling, mind and heart, intention and emotion, awareness and action. Now think about how much of life is spent reacting. Reacting to news, reacting to people, reacting to circumstances, reacting to stress, reacting to uncertainty. The survival self is always reacting because survival is focused on what is happening outside. But heart-centered living shifts attention inward. It asks a different question, not what is happening, but who am I being while it happens? And that question changes everything because identity shapes experience. Now imagine someone who practices gratitude daily, not perfectly but consistently. Someone who practices appreciation, compassion, presence, connection over time. Those emotional states stop being techniques. They become traits. They become part of identity. Now, the person does not merely practice coherence. They live coherently. They do not occasionally feel gratitude. They become grateful. They do not occasionally access compassion. They become compassionate. And this is where transformation becomes sustainable. Because true change is not what you do occasionally. True change is what becomes natural. Now let us revisit one of the biggest insights from this chapter. The body learns through repetition. What you repeatedly feel, the body repeatedly learns. What the body repeatedly learns eventually becomes familiar. What becomes familiar becomes identity. And identity influences reality. Now perhaps this explains why so many people remain trapped, not because they lack potential, but because they keep rehearsing the same emotional state, the same survival chemistry, the same stories, the same reactions again and again and again. Now imagine breaking that cycle. Imagine teaching the body a different emotional language, a language of trust, a language of coherence, a language of appreciation, a language of connection. Now the body begins expecting a different future. The nervous system begins supporting a different future. and identity begins creating a different future. Now, here is the final realization. Heart-centered living is not about becoming extraordinary. It is about becoming aligned with your values, aligned with your intentions, aligned with your emotions, aligned with your highest potential. Because when alignment increases, internal conflict decreases, energy returns, clarity returns, creativity returns, presence returns. Now life stops feeling like a constant battle and start feeling like a conscious creation. Not because challenges disappear, but because the relationship with challenges changes. Now perhaps the heart was never meant to replace the brain. Perhaps the heart was meant to guide it, to balance it, to humanize it, to remind us that intelligence is not only analytical, it is emotional, relational, experiential, and deeply connected. Now think about the person you are becoming, not the person you were, not the person others expect you to be, but the person you are consciously choosing to become. Every moment of gratitude strengthens that person. Every moment of compassion strengthens that person. Every moment of coherence strengthens that person. Every moment of awareness strengthens that person. Because transformation is not a destination, it is a practice, a daily practice, a moment to moment practice, a lifetime practice. And perhaps the ultimate lessons of this chapter is simple. The heart is not merely an organ, it is a teacher, a guide, a compass, a bridge. And when we learn to live from it consciously, we stop living as victims of our conditioning and begin living as creators of our experience. That is heart-centered living. And perhaps that is where a truly transformed life begins.